communities. So welcome everyone. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening for what promises to be a very inspiring, uplifting conversation about women breaking bias, which apparently is a hashtag. I haven't had an opportunity to go on social media, but breaking the bias is a hashtag. My name is Erica Bray-Parker. I currently serve as Councilwoman at Large in Wheaton on the Wheaton City Council. The Councilwoman at Large position covers the entirety of the city of Wheaton. People always ask me that question. I have lived in Wheaton for the past 25 years. I raised my boys through the Wheaton public school system. So I'm a big lover of Wheaton. And I also am a high school social studies teacher, and I've celebrated for the last 27 years Women's History Month every year with my high school students, and it's always been a joy. So in honor of International Women's Day, DuPage Habitat for Humanity, the Wheaton League of Women Voters that you've heard from, and the Wheaton Public Library asked me to moderate today's discussion with this panel of amazing women and share today's webinar to highlight and support and empower women in policy, as well as women in home ownership. I was very excited to get asked to moderate this. And most recently, what came to mind were just the women that served before me on the Wheaton City Council and the way that they paved the way for me to be able to be on the City Council. And then last night, we had a City Council meeting in Wheaton, and we had a proclamation honoring the Girl Scouts of America. It was their 110th anniversary. And there is this amazing little group of first graders, this first grade troop. And it was wonderful to be able to recognize them in Women's History Month, the day before International Women's Day. And we also learned from the mayor during his announcement that since 1962, when Wheaton first formed as a mayor and manager system, we have had 11 women serve on the city council, which is maybe a smaller number, but many of these women have moved on to higher office and are just doing amazing things. So welcome. Today, we're going to celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women around the globe. As we know, studies have shown that women's participation in the election process and in politics results in tangible gains for democracy, which include greater responsiveness to citizen needs, increased cooperation among party lines or across party lines and ethnic and racial lines, and a more sustainable future for all of our communities. During today's conversation, so I just want to reiterate a little bit about what Courtney Tedrick had to say. During today's conversation, we will be using the Q&A feature. So if you start to have questions, please don't forget to put in your questions in the Q&A feature. Courtney's been very well versed at accessing and maybe merging some of the questions together, and we'll get to as many questions as we can within our 1 hour time frame. We're going to be covering tonight discussion topics such as breaking the bias, which is our title, what that means, how our panelists have overcome that in their own lives, the underrepresentation of women in policy, and how to encourage more women to get involved in the voting process, the political process, and even run for elected office. We are going to turn this over in the second half to discuss some home ownership issues with Habitat Homeowners Iris Bess and Kate Melekhova. And then we're going to finally hear from Jennifer Taft, who serves as the interim executive director of DuPage Habitat for Humanity. So with all of that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, don't forget about the Q&A. For our panelists, I'm just going to ask, I'll name off your names, I'll lead you into the question, and then don't forget to unmute yourself. And when you're done, just don't forget to mute yourself again. So I'd like to now focus on our Women in Policy panel members, and I'm going to have you introduce yourselves. If you could include who you are, what you do, your title. For some of us, maybe even what that means, what your title and your position actually is and what that means. And then what is your favorite thing about your job or the position you serve in? And I'm going to start with Sharmin. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Sharmin Shahjahan. I'm a former village trustee of Hanover Park, just finished my term in 2021. I started in 2016, where I was the first Muslim woman to serve in DuPage County. And I'm also one of the first Bangladeshi American women in the United States to be elected as well. So I take this role very seriously. And the work, that really fascinated me about just in policymaking is to the direct impact that you can have in, whether it's affordable housing, transportation, language access, all of those things that directly affect us. So that's what's been exciting part of the journey. Since I finished my term, I've also been working with Afghan refugee resettlement agencies to help them connect with other resources and other agencies within Chicagoland and Illinois, and that's been very rewarding experience as well.
Great, thank you for that introduction and thank you for joining us tonight. Sara, we're gonna move on to you.
Hi, Erica. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Sara Sadat. I'm a Village of Lisle trustee, again, trustee at large. So the entire Village of Lisle is considered the jurisdiction, and I represent all of the community members within there. This is the first term that I have served in office. This is a 4-year term, and I'm about 2/3 of the way there. In the 2/3 of the time in office, I have, my favorite things have actually been just putting in cool projects like paving the roads and explaining to some of the brownie troops that attend and lead our assemblies and things like that, what it means to be a pothole, right? How do you fix that pothole? And how the little kids can actually see and make the change right in their backyard. We were talking about chickens. So I love the fact that I'm able to kind of talk about topics that affect our everyday life and make a policy around them and put them into the hands of my neighbors and my friends. I lived in Lisle for about 12 years, going on 13. I'm married to my amazing best friend. I'm a domestic abuse survivor from my previous relationship, and I have 3 lovely children. So as I was helping them kind of maneuver and kind of get acclimated back into their world, policymaking was one of those things that really stood out to me, and the impact that it made for my kids as they were going through and navigating Lisle and their infrastructure. So that's what got me in here, and I love my job. I'm a nerd. I'm a computer scientist by trade. So you know how when we were going to school, I was one of the 2 engineers that actually graduated with a computer science degree. So biases all around.
Great, thanks so much for joining us. And then we'll move on to Darlene. If you could introduce yourself, your position, and what's your favorite part of your job.
I'm Darlene Rossetti, the Regional Superintendent of Schools, and I serve the Regional Office of Education, which has oversight and service and support with 262 schools, 42 school districts, and I also work in some capacity with our private and parochial schools as well. So it's service and support that I like to think most about in the office, but we do have some compliance areas that we also, are required through school statute to facilitate. We do things like register every teaching certificate in DuPage County, that's in our office. We provide professional development so they can re-license recertify their license, provide criminal background checks, GED testing. We write a lot of grants. We bring in last year, we brought in over $20 million in additional dollars, largely federal dollars. We write for grants, things like violence prevention grants, SEL grants, leadership grants, things like that. We do a lot of work in early childhood education, work-based learning, STEM, SEL. So whatever our districts need from us, we'd like to be on top of that. Anything we can do to support, education and the children. in DuPage County. That's what we're all about. I have a great staff that works with me. My position too is an elected position. I am in my 5th term. So anyone who is not in, who does not like, who wants term limits, I'm not the person to talk to. I've been my 5th term. As I said, we are partisan. It is a partisan position, as well. There's 35 of us in the state of Illinois. And we each serve, a specific region. And as I said, I serve largely DuPage County.
Great, thanks. So many good questions to ask so many of you leaders and policymakers in our communities. For myself personally, as someone who ran for local office recently, so I'm on that same time frame as Sara. I'm in my 3rd year. For myself as a government teacher, for me, it was time to practice what I preach. I'm getting kids involved and I want to be involved myself. So my next question that I'll direct at a few of you, when did you know you wanted to pursue your interest in politics and as a local elected official, and what led you to that decision? And I'm going to go ahead and start with Sara. You kind of alluded to that a little bit with your kids. So if you want to get us started, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, definitely. My kids were always going to their favorite shops down on Main Street. And after a while, they just kind of started closing and going out of business. And there were circumstances where, we would be making plans to attend one of the stores that was right downtown. And the next day it would be gone, right? So my kids and I were just talking about this. They're like, well, what can we do in order to help bring businesses back into Lisle, or go find different stores? And one of the things as I was researching with my kids was, you actually have the power to attract businesses and to make policies and things that would bring local mom and pop shops into your neighborhoods. So that kind of was the starting point to this. And then I started getting involved with all the intergovernmental agencies, the school board, the park board, all of those things that just all kind of work together. And being a part of a village, I was raised to always know that I was the village, I was part of the village, and the village raised me. So this was just the natural stuff for me to kind of take and, just find a different way of giving back to the community, really putting the money where your mouth is, right, Erica? Really practicing what it is that you're teaching your kids. So leading by example is what really got me involved.
Right, great, thank you. Sharmin, would you mind sharing your story next?
Sure. So for me, it was actually unintentional. I started out, my background is in business management, finance. I was in the corporate world. And when I started my family, it was difficult to maintain those hours. And so I was transitioning. And at that point, I joined our village, had a culture, inclusion, diversity committee. Just, while my kids were little, I wanted to be involved in the community. And I've always had a passion for basically, coming to those who may not have a voice for themselves. And part of that is my own background, of being an immigrant child and just noticing the difficulties for my own family in terms of getting different resources. So that's kind of what got me involved into civic life and, into the city. And I was intentionally asked to serve, because it just never occurred to me, there was at that point, I didn't know anyone there, who looked like me, who had my background, who was in office. And so it just, when someone asked me, they're like, hey, we have a position, would you like to run for this, for village trustee? I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you were talking to me about this? And so then, I thought about it and I got up the courage to run. And once I got into office was when I realized, oh my goodness, we need more people, more women in government, because this is where we make those decisions. So that's kind of, naturally, I guess, how I got involved in politics.
Great, wonderful, thanks. Darlene, if you could share your story. And I know you said, you've been 5 terms, so you've definitely been at this longer than the rest of us. Thank you.
And it's good, you just have to believe it's just good, purposeful work. And I just want to say mine was probably more unintentional as well. It's not like you start this career path and you say, I'm going to be a regional superintendent, someday. But, I kind of look backwards a little bit. And, my parents always talked at the table about current political issues. My parents were always involved in some supporting candidates. We were born and raised in the city of Chicago. So there was always a lot of politics going around in the city of Chicago, but we would walk in parades with our parents. I remember being, this little Italian girl, and I would be in the St. Patrick's Day parade, and it was a lot of fun. But it was always about, volunteering and talking about issues that mattered. But I do want to say, when I really think what was kind of pivotal for me, which I think is kind of a thread, and I think through my life, and it has a lot to do with something my grandmother once said to me. Because we used to go, even when I was little, we would go to the polling places. And I remember talking to my grandparents and, asking them why they voted or what what this was all about. And I remember my grandmother, saying to me one time, she would always vote as a Democrat, always. And I said, why, Grandma? She said, because Franklin Delano Roosevelt was there for us when we needed him the most. And she said, that's what good government is all about. So when I think about that, it's about service. It's about service. And that's what I think the mindset is when we talk about any of whether it's a political position, running for office, or volunteering, or being with the league, or being with any profit or non-for-profit organization. It's about giving back, as was mentioned already, but also about service and having that mindset.
Wonderful. Thanks. What a great story with your grandma. How fun. So our next question that I'm going to move on to is a little bit more along the lines of the theme of tonight. What barriers or roadblocks have you faced along the way? How have you sort of broken the bias where you are today? And Sharmin, we're going to start with you this time.
Thank you. One area, that I focused on a lot was in our community in Hanover Park, we have 1/3 immigrants, and I was the first immigrant to be elected to village trustee. And so when I started talking about, these are the needs of the immigrants in our community, the pushback that I got was, that's a federal issue. We don't deal with immigration. We don't talk about immigrants. And so I had to then bring it back to, to our community and say, no, it's not. We're not saying that we're going to make federal changes, but we need to serve our community. And 1/3 of our community are immigrants. We have to understand, what that process is and, how to serve them. And so I think that was one of the bigger challenges that, I had to work through. And then many of us will also relate, as a woman also, there are a lot of stereotypes in terms of your place in society and, all of those. So I think just both through action and just conversation is, how I've kind of worked to break some of those stereotypes and break the bias, so to say. And the last thing I wanted to say too is that one of the things that, myself and, my partner on our board, the two of us worked really hard at getting to understand the different communities, that are in Hanover Park. And so we put together our coalition, with our culture, inclusion, and diversity group, where we bring stakeholders together so that it's not just, you're not just hearing it from one person that, this is an issue in our community, but it's being reverberated, through all the different agencies that as they're serving these different groups, we're all having, similar ideas or issues that we need to work through. So I think that that's the best or the most effective way for me to overcome some of those biases in order to be able to, serve our community.
Great, thank you. I do want to remind our viewers too that the Q&A, if you've got any questions, and I do want to make sure we have some time for questions. Darlene, is there anything you would like to share with that regarding your barriers or roadblocks you've experienced?
Well, I'm a lot more older than most people on this this Zoom right now. So things are, different as well. Particularly, I was in high school in the late 1960s and into the early 70s. And, I was told by my family, girls don't go to college. And so there was a barrier, later on when I wanted to run for the office, the Regional Office of Education, I was told to stay home and take care of my children. And so, there's been barriers. And I think that, the big issue here is, you have to ask yourself, well, why not? Why not run? Why not go to college? I think that's a big question because we're confronted with a lot of no's all the time. And so my office, the Regional Office of Education, was established in DuPage County in 1854. And in 2002, when I won my first election, it was the first female regional superintendent in DuPage County. So that was a long time. It was a long time. Not only that, but the county board, or the county-wide elected officials, your recorder, your county treasurer, your county clerks, there had only been one female ever elected to a county-wide office. So I was the second female ever. So those were breaking some boundaries right there. And it was just that same, asking yourself, well, why not? Why not me? Why does it have to be somebody else? Why can't it be me?
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That time frame is incredible. The first. And then Sara, did you want to add a story, a barrier you've experienced?
Oh, certainly. I'm an immigrant, so I came to this country when I was about 8 years old. And at that time, majority of my education and my grammar upbringing was completely different than the American upbringing, right? So the way that my sentence structure is, or the way that I speak, or the way that I use the words, so I still pull out some of those Indian terms in my head and the way that we speak. So one of the things that I really faced when I was running for office, as well as even on the dais, is my sentence structure is usually not the proper American way, right? So it's not the proper English American way. So it was one of those biases that I kept getting faced. Oh, she doesn't know how to speak, or she doesn't know how to talk. But it's one of those things where you just have to sit back, you pause, and you try to understand and familiarize yourself with, hey, this is somebody that's coming from a different background, a different culture. And, in my culture, women are meant to not be seen or to be heard. So for me to run for that political office, putting myself out there, my family out there, taking pictures of me and promoting myself was completely different within my culture, and especially the people my family members that are here. So really considering pushing myself out there and telling over and over and over again what my story was, and challenging why you shouldn't put women in the corner or put women inside the house. These are things that you would expect to hear in different countries, right, outside of America. But within our culture here in United States, I was getting the same feedback, right? So really continuing to challenge that bias has been very important to me. And I want to continue to do that as we go forward. And again, everything that I do is for my kids and for a way for the rest of the children here in the United States to continue to see who it is that is sitting on that dais, that they can also envision themselves on that dais someday very, very soon.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Next, we have a few questions for each of these three panelists that expands upon your experiences and positions, and then how it relates to Habitat's mission. So we're going to kind of shift over into Habitat for Humanity and its mission of homeownership. Darlene, I'm going to start with you on this. And I know as an educator for 27 years that there are many factors in a child's life that leads to success for them. But Darlene, as regional superintendent of DuPage County Schools, what impact does having a decent and affordable place to live have on a child, especially how it relates to the school experience?
Well, first let me say this. My position I work with homeless families in our schools. I have an early childhood education program, and we work with many at-risk homes in DuPage County. And I run at-risk programs for middle school and high school students. So I've seen in a lot, and I can just tell you that stability that every child needs to have is absolutely critical. I'll tell you one story, and this was kind of early on as regional superintendent. In one of our programs, I went in and I would often go and visit with some of my staff, you know, their families that they were serving. This is in my parents as teachers family program. And I walked into a home, and it was a 2-bedroom home with 14 children. And they had a home, but they did not have a home that would provide that kind of stability, that kind of support for learning, you know, to be at their optimum the next day, that we want our children to be the next day, where they felt they were well rested, where they had, you know, their own bed, where they had enough food, where they had the kind of things, the clothing and everything, the warmth, the blankets, everything that they needed. And so that was something that, you know what, I would never forget. And that was something that I think is so important to that every child be ready to walk into that classroom, whether it's pre-K, whether it's kindergarten, wherever they're at, to walk in ready to learn. And part of that ready to learn is having that stable home, that stable type of environment where there is enough food, there's enough clothing, and they feel they're not living. I've homeless families that I know that have been living in cars, in children. And it's not just the physical impact, it's the emotional impact that it has on our children as well, too. When they feel different than the other kids or not as good as the other kids because they don't have that, they're not learning at their optimal to do that. We'll see kids act out as a result of that. These are not kids that are behavioral problems. These are kids that need that kind of, that stable type of environment, of a home environment. So yes, very important.
Yeah, thank you, Darlene. I think you the nail on the head, right? It's essential. Sara, we're gonna switch over to you. You shared a very personal point with all of us, and I thank you for that. As a domestic abuse survivor, how do you see housing on sort of both sides of the coin, both a hindrance to a better life and maybe the answer to a better life?
I definitely see it as an answer to better life. And you know, I was fortunate enough to have the house in my name throughout the marriage. I was the one with the good credit. I was the one who had been in this country the longest. So I was able to actually be a homeowner because of that. So I didn't have, me and my kids were not homeless just due to that reason. But on the flip side, when I started working on the board for Family Shelter Services, as well as a trustee for Village of Lisle, I started seeing a lot of irregularities, right? So people not knowing where to go. Even if they have family members here in this community, the family members not necessarily believing them that they were in a domestic abusive relationship. Just having somebody to go to. My late aunt is the one, as I was navigating the court system, the cases, the God knows however many therapy appointments with my children, my aunt, on the other hand, started working with local agencies, and me and her, we kind of started figuring out, here are the different steps that you can take, here are the different organizations that you can reach out to get that stability and to get that help. We were able to place a lot of individuals in our Muslim community, the women in our Muslim community, through this organization, and they were able to find that peace and that calm that they needed just for a temporary basis until they were able to get back on their feet, right? So it was just a matter of that immediate impact that our families needed, our kids needed, to kind of regain that composure and just take a breath, that they have been kind of relieved from this abusive relationship. And ongoing years of trauma that some of them have faced, right? So I've seen it on the other side. So aligning our survivors with housing options, with clothes, with food, with things like that, even services, even counseling services. All of these things have happened in the past couple of years that, traditionally weren't all part of the situation. So when I was going through this about 10 years ago, that's when it kind of came to light. So going forward, it is really important to continue to speak to this and to continue to educate everybody else that is going through this, to know that there are options. There are different agencies that are out there that are willing to help. For me to continue to be on social media and promote events like this and promote different ways and awarenesses to housing opportunities, to suicide awareness, things like that, are only because if even one person out of 1,000 pays attention to me, that means that's one life saved, right? So that's why I continue to do what I do and put myself out there this way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll switch over to Sharmin. You were very instrumental in bringing Habitat for Humanity to Hanover Park during your time as village trustee. One could say you were an elected official supporting great policy, which leads to great programming. Can you tell us the impact that had on your community?
Sure. And, the way we kind of came across Habitat for Humanity was that we were trying to honor Dr. Martin Luther King and, his legacy that he has left behind. And usually a lot of the service projects and things like that happen in January. And we were, this is Chicago, so we're like, okay, let's do something some other time. One of the legacies that he has that isn't as talked about is his legacy on affordable housing and quality affordable housing and his impact on passing the Fair Housing Act. So that's kind of where it started in terms of engaging with Habitat for Humanity. When we first started out, we were just looking to help the neighbors that we've identified that needs help. It wasn't necessarily a specific program that we were looking to put together. When we started partnering with Habitat, I think we naturally realized there's a great potential for us to, invest in Hanover Park and revitalize some of our neighborhoods. And so Habitat for Humanity, they chose a particular neighborhood, Greenbrook Tanglewood, in the Hanover Park area, which has also been identified as a disproportionately affected community by the state of Illinois, meaning, they've had a lot of policies and things that impacted them in terms of the quality of life there, So anyway, once Habitat for Humanity came from, I would say from 2014, 2015 to now, we've had a long-term commitment. We had this partnership. We noticed our home prices, for example, going up 3 times. Our resident engagement from day one was, I think maybe 3 residents came out. And then by the end of it, we had, I don't even remember, 70, 100, people that are coming out. And it started out as a once a year, programming. And then again, it developed over time into this larger neighborhood revitalization experience. So it's been an incredible partnership, to have Habitat for Humanity. Together, we've earned, we were recognized with the Governor's Hometown Award in 2018, as well as Habitat for Humanity also was awarded the Urban Land Institute's Vision Award around that time too, for this, for this work. So we recognize the impact of having the affordable housing and all, and quality affordable housing in our community. And one of the biggest improvements or impact to our community is that we have a lot more homeowners than rentals. When they first came in, we had a lot of rentals in that neighborhood. People just were not as engaged, and they were not as proud of taking care of, I wouldn't say they weren't just proud, but there just wasn't as much incentive to have a lot of pride in your community. And so through all of this work, I'm just so grateful to have Habitat in our hometown, and just the work that we've done together has been incredible. So I'm really appreciative of, of the partnership we've built together.
Well, and thanks for your leadership in that too. So we're gonna, the stories the 3 of you have shared, your experiences and just the amazing insight you each have has just been incredible. There was a great question in the chat. How do you get other busy women? So we have this theme, you know, of women uplifting women, and a lot of us are busy. So how do you get other busy women engaged in the work that you do, either as colleagues or stakeholders? So I'm going to kind of throw it out. I don't know if Sara or Sharmin or Darlene want to jump in. Sara,
yeah, let me jump in. I got this one. So I am a senior manager for Discover, the credit card, the bank company. So I have a crazy work schedule. I got 3 children. I'm an artist. I'm a whole bunch of different things, right? So busy is like an understatement of the century. But here's the thing. I don't necessarily know too many people that ask the same question to men, right? So I kept getting asked this question over and over again. Do you have time to actually take on another village trustee job? Well, the one thing that women do really well, and I know every single one here will agree with me, we multitask. We have all plates up in the air and we juggle them like nobody's business, right? So if there is something that we feel passionate about, that we feel like we want to get involved with, there is no putting us down. So when you have people in your life, like my best friend who I'm married to, helping support you and just continuously encouraging you to just be your best self, you find ways of doing that. And that energy just resonates onto the rest of your friends, right? So they want to jump in and they want to make sure that they speak out against a boarded up building in downtown, or they, with the word of mouth, they reach out to their friends and be like, oh, hey, cool, we have an open building here. You want to come in and set up shop? That's how you get community and people involved, is just being energetic, motivated, and upholding one another, and stop asking each other, why are we so busy? We're always busy. Everyone is busy, especially women raising children.
I wanted to add one more thing too, is, you know, I was asked this question as well, you know, how do you have time to do all of these different things? And the thing that I say is, you know, it's not about making the time, it's about, you know, what's important to you and putting time into that, right? So, you know, the thing that I keep sharing with everyone, when I first started, it just started as 1 hour a month. Any one of us can squeeze 1 hour a month to do something for our community. So just start small. You know, you don't need to change the world in the next day. In fact, none of us can do that, you know, and just recognizing and, you know, just breaking it down so that, you know, we can kind of relate to that experience. And then I think the second part that I always mention to everyone is that, you know, we're all in this community, we all play a role, and we can extend that role just a little bit more. So for example, you know, with your schools, if you want to be involved in the PTA, or you know, if you're involved in, or if you're interested in environmentalism, there's different ways for us to connect that to government and policymaking, and making sure that whatever we're passionate about, you know, we have a voice in terms of how, you know, those things kind of play out.
And I would just add too, similar to what both were saying, but this whole concept of networking and bringing people together with a common cause. And I'll just share this with you. A number of years ago, and not really that long ago, maybe 5 years, you know, we still, when I started in my position, and I'm talking about district superintendents, we had about 20% in the entire state. Now think about it, we have 875 school districts in the state of Illinois. And about 20% 20 years ago were females. Don't even talk about minorities. Let's not even talk about minority candidates at all, you know, superintendents at all. But today we're 28%. It's a little bit better, but still it's about finding that common cause and working towards. So we'll find where women helping other women, women wanting support other women as well too. You know, there's a great candidate for a possible, you know, position within their organization, within their district or whatever. It becomes very important. So that whole concept of networking, supporting each other, finding that common cause of what you're all working towards. It's not just about you, but it's also about helping others as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that insight. Those are wonderful answers. Again, thank you for your stories and your experience and your just amazing insight. We're going to shift gears now, and we are going to move on to the Habitat homeowners. We have Iris Bess, and Kate Melekhova with us tonight. We really appreciate their time. I believe, I just want to make sure we are going to start with Iris. Great, I see Iris is on. To a slight conflict, but she is on and ready to go. So Iris, we're going to start with you. Welcome. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what led you to applying to the Habitat Homeownership Program?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. Habitat is, I was first introduced to Habitat when I was experiencing some challenges just in life. I found myself served with divorce papers, on the verge of being put out of my home, no job, no car, with 3 kids. And it was a challenge, and just didn't think that I had resources or anyone to help. Family was able to help as much as they could, but anywhere in the city that I could afford was not a place that I wanted to raise my children. My oldest was she was actually starting her first year of college, and I had 2 smaller sons. And at that time, it was just really hard to be able to be in a place where they could have good schools and have a home that they could call their own, a backyard to play in, areas where we were, it wasn't safe to just let them walk to the store or even be on public transportation. So that's what was available to me in the city. But I came out to DuPage County with the hopes to be in better school districts and find places where my kids could grow up. And what I found here was that Habitat had this program. I was connected through Habitat through other resources, but it was their mission, it's Habitat's mission and the partnership that helped me to know that I would be able to own a home. It was very challenging for me. And as a single parent, you're just thinking, how am I going to feed my kids? They have to have all of their necessities. And now I'm faced with making sure that I have a home for them. And Habitat made that happen for me. I just went through the process of the entry process, had the information session, got a lot of information in regards to how the program worked, and they just made it very doable. At first it was just all the negativity coming. I can't do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I need the help. And just going through the process and following the guidance of those that were laying out the outline for me to be able to really prepare myself to take on this home ownership. And it was scary, but I was happy to be able to connect with Habitat. And it's been a joy from the beginning to end. Definitely not easy, but absolute joy. So I'm very thankful to be able to connect with Habitat for Humanity and all the things that I've learned, been able to take my children along the process. And they're side by side with me. So it's not just me alone, but it's us, it's our family. And I'm very grateful for that.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. We're going to move on to Kate. If you could tell us your story, introduce yourself, and what led you to applying to Habitat Homeownership Program.
Well, thank you for having me today. My name is Kate. Well, actually it's Ekaterina, but Kate is fine. Obviously, as you can hear, I'm an immigrant. I came to United States already 12 years. Like I'm here. And my story actually started pretty normal. I got a job, then I met my husband, then I got pregnant. Then we find out that this is twins, and that led to some problems. I basically spent extended period of time in the hospital on the bed rest. And when I came out with 2 prematurely born twins, we end up in a rental house with my husband, ex-husband by now, of course, with 2 children with some health problems. I could not work, obviously, because I was all involved in the healthcare for them. And I'm not sure what's happened, but my family life has basically crumbled down. And My ex-husband got involved with drugs, and it led to the domestic abuse. And I was have to file for divorce, call police, and eventually file for divorce because I was afraid that me and my children would not be able to simply survive in that atmosphere. During the time while I was not working and did not receive any support, all my funds were gone. So we were in a homeless program, and I was thinking where I'm going to go now, because those homeless programs, they are for a certain period of time, and yes, it was perfect temporary solution, but what's next? How am I going to raise my children? How I can give them this feeling of safety? That was the time when I actually met Jennifer, and it was a lot of meetings, a lot of workshops. I was really determined, and I don't know if any other program would be able to actually give me a place, a safe place to live, and actually make me a homeowner. You know, it's not a Section 8, it's not a hand down, just actual help that give you a little push, but you have to climb your way up. Nevertheless, it was a perfect experience. It was a whole community who was helping me with my twins, because my family is still in Russia, and like just my input, I do have family all over that part of the Soviet, like ex-Soviet Union. So Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Russia, it's all where my family is. So it's very hard times for us right now. But nevertheless, right now we are in perfect position. I moved into this place. I'm in my house right now 4 years ago. My twins outgrow almost all the problems that we had. So we're not alive and safe, we're thriving. Even those crazy and unfortunate times with the COVID, where almost half of the population lost the job, we were able to, of course, pay the mortgage, be here. I was working with my children, and we even skipped the grade. So, and it's only because I had that peace of mind that, okay, I'm safe. This is our place. Nobody will knock on my door with an order that, okay, you have to be evicted and go find something. No, we were able to concentrate on the positive things. And of course, it's all thanks to God and to Habitat for Humanity. What I heard from previous speakers, almost all of you ladies have some kind of traumatic experience in the past, either as a child you was facing, okay, my family went through some hard times and something happened, or like Sara had a similar experience in her life. And I think that's the most common reason what drives women go to politics and fight for the power. I don't think, well, I don't think it's in our nature to ask for these leading roles, but we do have rights to do this. We live in great times when we can take those roles. But I wish in everybody's life it would be a little bit more safety when we not have to, if we not want to. And thanks God for me, I can give this to my children. It's very pleasing for me, and that makes me basically leap with joy every time when I see boys going like up the stairs and like, oh, I love my house so much. This is so great that we're here. Or create those games outside, and I not have to worry that, okay, tomorrow something can happen, especially in this unstable time. So that's a great program. I do believe that there is nothing better here, even in the United States, that exist for the women in my situation that could give us an opportunity to be safe, be ourselves. And if we choose to concentrate on, again, raising family, raising new, healthy, mentally healthy members of our community. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kate, for sharing your experience and all your insight as well. I'm gonna ask that we dig down a little bit deeper. Tonight's theme, you know, it's International Women's Day. We're talking about breaking the bias. Kate, I'm gonna go back to you. Can you maybe dig a little bit deeper? What do you think it was about being a woman or a single mom on this journey? What were some of the key factors you think existed as being a mom and a woman that impacted the journey towards homeownership?
I would not say it was toward the home ownership, because I was blessed with a great support from my church, from all the organizations that I met. Again, I am lucky to be inside, but when I became a homeowner, that's when I started feeling that I'm a woman. And I'm giving you a simple example. And I, by the way, discuss it with a couple of my friends. It's a similar experience. Pretty often it happens when you're a single mom or single lady. First of all, you're afraid to call someone in to fix, I don't know, the toilet, to put something that you may, I can do this, but I don't have time, or I have different priorities at the moment. And I may hire someone to do something in the house or on the backyard. But first, I am scared because I am here by myself and my children are 8. So it's hard to find a reliable person who you can invite to your house. Or number 2, there is pretty often a conversation that puts you in a position like, oh, you're a lady, what you can understand. And I'm not willing to explain that I was doing my volunteers hours. I know how it's supposed to be done. No, you kind of look down and, okay, well, you do not understand. I will tell you what is it and how much it may cost. Even despite the fact that right now I'm working for a landscaping company that's based in Tennessee, and I'm well aware what may cost some items and how it's done. So another option, what could be done, like how it can go wrong. And again, it's not my story, it's my friend who said, actually, they call someone for the estimate and that person said, I will talk to your husband because I'm not going to say twice something. That is real stories. That's hard to find. In my community, though, by the way, I often look down, despite my master's degree in history and teaching studies, because I do have some input in my kids' education, especially considering the fact that we skipped the grade and it was a lot of obstacles in the way. When I have a couple meetings with our superintendent, again, I was looked down and I was ignored when I had like exact questions, like, can you explain me this? Can you give me this information? Yes, 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 and no. And no matter how I try to prove my point and explaining that I do have rights for this information, I'm a homeowner, I'm paying taxes here. I have 2 children in the public school. It's still very hard to get through. I do believe it's 2 factors. I'm a lady, single mom, obviously, and I do have some language barriers. So.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that perspective. And Iris, I just want to turn it over to you as well. Do you have a perspective on just being a woman and a single mom and how that impacted your journey to homeownership?
Yes, I do. When I was married, I stopped my career to come home to have children. So that was an agreement, so to speak. I even homeschooled my children, and it was my responsibility. The home was my responsibility, and I welcome that. But when I found myself no longer married, and now I'm still responsible for all of those other things, it was more or less like, wow, do I have to be superwoman? So I'm supposed to homeschool my kids and work and take care of provide a home and transportation and, do all those things. And it was like, I think it was Sara that mentioned, like, we multitask. We learn how to do those things. And as a woman, it does get hard because the stigma is that, well, you're a woman. Some men still think it's like the inferiority type thing. And it seems like we have to work extra hard to prove ourselves. So I too went to school and got my master's degree and was just like trying to get into the workforce and continue. And it was still just not enough. But I had to turn my heart inward to think about what was most important, and that was my children. So I thrived and I got my strength from my children. When I look at them and they look to me, it was like, that's all I needed. That was my drive. That was what made me push forward. It wasn't about what anyone else said I could or couldn't do. I had to do it because I had these little ones looking to me to take them further. There was no time to fall apart. There was no time to, not be able to provide for them. And even when I couldn't provide for them, I had to literally just say to them, you know what, mommy can't do that right now. Doesn't mean no, it just means not now. So having those conversations with them and explaining to them the process so that they understand. I have a daughter and 2 sons, but I also help my sons to understand that women are important, so I'm happy to be that important woman for them now so they can see that example and, what we are capable of, not to have the stereotypes. We have those conversations. And in this homeowner process, I'm the one that had to, get the duct tape and wrap a faucet that didn't work when we were in our previous home. I'm the one that had to figure out, oh, well, how do you change the, light bulbs, mow the lawn if we couldn't afford a service and things like that. So they see me doing that, and it's hard, but it's the drive. I'm absolutely fueled by my children and their expectations of me to say, hey, here's an example. Going into the homeowner process, now I'm taking them by the hand and they're going through this with me. So it's not me doing it. It's, hey, we have these sweat equity hours. Let's go in and this is what we're going to do. Sure, sometimes they, kicked and screamed, but it's okay. Dust yourself off and we're going to go and do this together because this home is going to be ours. So to have that ownership was what was really important. And I had to just keep telling myself that, again, I couldn't look at, what someone else had or what someone else thought I should have or should not have or what I was able to do, and not comparing myself to others, but comparing myself to my best and what I could do to be able to help my children understand that. So Habitat has taught me so much, just getting in there. I'm so thankful that they give us the outline and all the resources. So now we don't have to worry about someone coming in and getting over. We don't have to worry about someone saying, oh, well, sure, I'm going to charge you $5,000 for a $2,000 project, to not take advantage of us that way, because we are well informed, as a woman, well informed and being able to know what to expect. I mean, the process has been very, very detailed. And I learn something every time I come in contact with anyone new from Habitat, any programs. I think the program is absolutely set up to strategically prepare me as a homeowner. And it's removed all the scary parts. Because you think about, how am I going to do this? You know, in an apartment setting, you can pick up the phone and call the maintenance and have them come fix it. So now I'm responsible for that. But Habitat has prepared me. They taught me how to do the research and how to get the proper quotes and how to look for things, and then even do maintenance, preventive maintenance, you know, on a home. So I feel very confident, and I feel like I'm equipped to have to go on this journey. And I'm not by myself, because again, my children, we're all in. We have just grasped this together, and we are excited to do this.
Well, thank you so much. And if Kate and Iris, you should definitely make sure you get access to the chat. You got a lot of positive feedback there, a lot of positive people. So thank you for all of that. We're the final little segment of our event tonight, we're gonna hear from Jennifer Taft. So Jennifer Taft is currently the interim executive director for DuPage Habitat. She's gonna talk about a specific program, and I think she'll probably answer the question in the chat about volunteer opportunities. But first, Jennifer, if you could talk about DuPage Habitat's mission and your role in that mission.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you all that's on the panel tonight. So a special shout out to Kate and Iris. You guys are partners in this journey of homeownership. We are here and we support your mission in homeownership because we want to provide everybody a decent place to live. So it's because of your perseverance, your dedication, that we are in this journey together as partners. And one of the reasons I came to Habitat 10 years ago was to provide that service, that support to the families of DuPage County. When we look at the high price costs over the nation, or just in Illinois alone, 1 in 7 families are paying, or 1 in 7 families are paying 50% of their income on housing. And when we look at the disparities against minorities and female, we look at that wage gap, and we look at how Kate and Iris are bettering themselves. They both have master's degrees, but the wage gap and the women still earn an average of only 80% of what men earn. And the challenge is even greater in Black and Hispanic women. So those challenges of housing discrimination among minority women and low-income borrowers provides a platform, an additional platform for Habitat to say, we want to partner, we want to empower women. And I was doing some math earlier because I wanted to provide some data, right? Because everybody loves data. And since 1995, we've served 100 families with homeownership. 50 of those families are female head of households in our program. And then I went back and I looked at, since I started at Habitat in 2012, I've been along that journey of providing and supporting families through homeownership, 52 families over the last 10 years that I've been with Habitat. So when we look at building up and empowering women in that affordable housing space, we want to make sure that we're here and we support you in your journey. And going to how we work in communities and we provide that quality of life. I'm going to go back to the Hanover Park and speak to that. We came to Hanover Park in 2014. We put together a neighborhood revitalization initiative based on the quality of life framework. And within that, in partnership with the village, the school district, and all the other partners that have come to the coalition, we were able to provide not only programs and services in the affordable housing space, but also with education, job training, transportation, just resources to empower women in the community. And we look at how we move forward, and we find over and over that the work we do here at Habitat and the residents that lead us and support us through this work are actually a majority of women in the community. We have to celebrate community, we have to celebrate women, and we need to empower women. And with that, I want to roll video.
That was Courtney's cue. Awesome.
My name is Whitney, and I am a future Habitat homeowner. I heard about Habitat from an organization that was helping me through a domestic violence situation, freeing myself from that domestic violence situation and freeing my kids from that, and just thinking about what did I want to do and how do I want to be an example to them really, really changed my future. Some of the feelings that I had when I found out I was first accepted into the program was a little bit of nervousness because I didn't really know how I was going to do it, but also just happiness and like joyfulness and a feeling of like being blessed and like having God on my side because I really wanted to be a part of the program. Something that I would tell a woman facing adversity or my younger self would be to continue to accomplish whatever your goals are, or surround yourself around people just that love you and genuinely want to see you be successful. Habitat Home means to me like having a future with my kids, creating memories that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives.
My name is Damian, and I'm a future Habitat homeowner. And going through the military, doing training, and seeing a lot of new things, it made me stronger as a woman. And I feel like I've learned to be humble and have the strength and power to be anything I want to be. When you're a woman, you don't think you can do as much, but you can. And I tried to show my best efforts in everything that I was trained at. Sweat equity is basically going on the building site, helping build a house for the future homeowner or ourselves as well for our home. As a woman, future homeownership means having something accomplished. It's not easy for a woman to have a home and to have stability without an extra help, and I'm just grateful to have that. The cost of owning a home and paying the mortgage is just, it doesn't seem possible. By going through Habitat, it's an affordable home where we can pay the mortgage and still live a happy life. When I first saw the home that was going to be mine, I was like, wow, it's a lot of square footage and it looks like it's gonna be a perfect fit for our family.
Hi, I'm Geeta Wolt. I'm a corporate volunteer from US Bank and an advocate for Women Build. There was a lot of uncertainty when I walked away from the abusive relationship. I was not financially independent. I just started my job at US Bank, and I really had no savings and didn't know the future. And I think all I knew was I needed to be free, and also the well-being of my son and myself. I think the Day of the Women Build is important because I feel that all women come together to help other women. So it's really important that, the home that we build is going to propel a woman out of adversity towards the future so that they can transform their life as well as the lives of their families. A lot of times people measure their success using someone else's ruler. And stop doing that and just do you. That's what I would advise to women.
So if as we wrap up, I know we definitely went over a little bit, but that's okay. These are all really good, important things. Jennifer, would you mind sharing about the information about this year's Women Build and any other ways people can get involved?
Absolutely, thank you. So this year's Women Build kicks off in October. It's October 5th through the 8th and October 12th through the 15th in Hanover Park, so mark your calendars. So any woman that wants to build, construct a home is invited to join us. No experience necessary. We'll teach you everything you need to know the day of your build. Volunteers will work under the guidance of our construction team. Our goal this year is to engage over 200 women and raise over $150,000 to provide affordable housing. We encourage you to join DuPage Habitat and our Women Build. Help build a future for a future homeowner. And there's several ways to get involved. So here I think answers the question that's in the chat box. You can fundraise and be a builder at the event. You can talk to your company about being a sponsor for the event. You can volunteer to be on the Women Build Planning Committee. That's fun. I heard that Debbie and Courtney might give you treats and coffee or tea or something. Donate to the Women Build event or all of the above. If you want to volunteer in addition to that, you can contact our volunteer manager, but specifically for Women Build, reach out to Courtney Gallagher at kgallagher@gohabitat.org.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thanks for the work that you do. I believe Courtney Gallagher is putting a link into the chat. Awesome. See, just like that, cued. The link to fill out as an interest form in the chat. I'm going to even guess that Courtney Tedrick is going to send that out when they do a follow-up email. If you fill out the interest form by this Friday, by March 11th, you will be entered into a drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. The interest form is also going to be linked as a follow-up email and from the Wheaton Public Library. So I want to just thank all of our panelists. I truly am personally, I'm feeling energized and inspired by each and every one of you. Thank you to Sharmin, thank you to Sara, thank you to Darlene, thank you for the continued work you do as leaders in this community, in our communities. Thank you to Kate and Iris for sharing your story. I think on behalf of all of us, we wish you continued success. And then thank you to Jen and the entire DuPage Habitat for Humanity team. Thank you to Courtney Gallagher. Thank you to the Wheaton League of Women Voters and Judy Beaver and her leadership and the partnerships that we have. Finally, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney Tedrick, who's going to get us all closed off. And thank you for your time, everyone, this evening.
Erica, I think you thanked everyone I was going to thank, but I thank you, Erica, for being such a fantastic moderator. But thank you, everyone, on this wonderful and inspiring panel. I'm very inspired for International Women's Day. So thank you all for attending. And yes, look for that follow-up email with all the resources from Habitat for Humanity. And please fill out the survey. Thank you all. Happy International Women's Day. Thanks and have a wonderful night, everyone.